Okay, what's going on here? Why is everything chrome?
Everything is chrome in the future.
Oh, my. Impossible. He's lying. He's right.
Hey. Oh, come on, dude. You can do this. Jump! Come on. Damn it. Oh my god. J-Lo, turn it down. Turn it down. God. Sorry, it's my neighbor there. She's playing music all the time. Like, she's playing samba. From hear her dancing in my space apartment. It was supposed to be luxury. I shouldn't know I have neighbors in space. Yet here we are. I feel cheated by the real estate market. Got a right to Michael Jackson, Jan Jackson. What kind of spaceship is this? Funny me. Hello friends, Aesthetic here. Your favorite aesthetic historian. You just don't know it yet. Welcome to my space-clad mothership of all things Y2K. And today we are cruising the altitude of nostalgia and wistfully ponder about the times of silver-clad tech, alien-like interiors, blue eyeshadows, spiky hair, and blob everything. Do you remember blob everything? I remember. Can you see my ring light? We are in the year 2000, and if you can't see the ring light around my eyes, I'm doing it wrong. What will Hype Williams say? From architecture through art and pop culture, all the way to even party flyer designs, we will look into the inner mechanisms of Y2K aesthetic, how it started, how it got developed, and how it took hold on our collective imagination for a good chunk of a decade. And you know me, and you know how I do things. If you don't know, let me just tell you, we are going to delve deep, and I mean deep into the analysis of the aesthetic. We're going to look into the political, sociological, economical, philosophical, and first and foremost, visual, to understand how this aesthetic came to be. So buckle up friends, put on your silver PVC suits, don your silver Oakleys, and turn on your lava lamps. Welcome to the Y2K Millennium Aesthetic Analysis.
1. The basics.
Alright friends, so first things first, let's get definitions out of the way, shall we? So, Y2K Aesthetic Millennium was a aesthetic, or I would rather say a kind of collective design trend that was going through a variety of mediums, from new digital media all the way through architecture, interior design, fashion, pop culture, music video design, home tech, all the way to industrial design of consumer goods. It was a trend that was going through the time period from 1997 to roughly 2003. The name Y2K came from the so-called Y2K bug, which was a computer bug. It was basically a problem with the way computers were set up at the time. So in a nutshell, before the 2000s, the way how computers display dates was in two-digit format. So year 1999 was showing as 99. And with the coming year 2000, people worried that the date digit turning into double zeros might cause a major glitch, leading to a widespread reset of operating systems and causing major mayhem. People believe all sorts of things, that the elevators will stop working, that bank safes will be on a lockdown, that planes will crash. It caused really a huge worldwide hysteria. This, however, subsequently led to great mobilization on a global level, and the tech was upgraded on a worldwide scale. And even though that the bug never came to be, the name Y2K stuck, and we still describe this time period as Y2K. So, you may ask, why are we talking about this today? I wanted to take on this aesthetic because, well, I mean, for one, I'm personally very nostalgic about it. It was my early childhood and I remember it very fondly. And, you know, I remember how those things all look very space-like and how this kind of look gave a specific feel to things in pop culture. And it's just fun to look back to it. But also, I wanted to look into it because contextually speaking, its visuals are gaining an increasing relevance in today's tech-savvy, internet-driven culture. As you will see as we will go deeper into the video, the Y2K is a somewhat of an imagined, symbolic, sort of like artisan prologue to our current digital cultural landscape. Also, music, advertising, tech, fashion industry, all of those industries, by conscious intent, seem to circle back to the visual language of Y2K. For example, the metaverse kind of introduced again this conversation about virtual landscapes, which in of itself is a very Y2K trope. In music, the whole genres such as hyperpop play upon the stylistic hallmarks of the era. In fashion, for example, we are circling back to the looks of the era, but also advertisement and editorial, to the methods of promotion that stem from early 2000s. Also in graphic design and content creation, with the ever-increasing availability of 3D softwares and graphic design softwares, we see this kind of style being developed that harks back to the world of early virtual realities that was established by the gaming industry and the graphic design industry of the early 2000s as well. So, with all that being said, as we can see, all of those things kind of influence the look and feel of our modern culture, especially the digital culture and its landscape. And I just wanted to circle back to it and just see where those things came from and understand this design period from the perspective of the design history. So, we're gonna do that today, friends. But, first things first. Ooh, my hair. Now, before we delve deep into the aesthetic bits of the aesthetic and what exactly define its visuals, first we need some context about the times in which this style was conceived. In order for us to understand why things looked the way they looked, socioeconomic circumstances are king. So first, let's look at some facts, shall we?
2. The origins.
The 90s. Yes, the first thing that you need to know is that there was a global sense of prosperity. By the mid-90s, the big part of the world, especially US and Western Europe, were very much thriving economically. Imagine. In the US alone, the economy grew by a whopping 40% throughout the period of the 90s. The median income per household grew, so did the overall employment. On the federal level, the US resolved its deficit problem. Also, the foreign policies on all fronts looked way more optimistic. Why was it? Well, Soviet Union fell, and with it, the threat of the Cold War, and also the win in the Gulf War in the 1990s. For the best part of the 90s, there was no immediate sense of international threat to the Western world, leading to an overall sense of peaceful attitudes. At least for a while. And with the prosperous economy in the centerfold, the world was culturally geared towards seeking connection rather than creating a localized divisions. Crazy how alien that feels now, huh? Is it just me? But, I mean, you get the picture, right? The Western world's economy was thriving, people felt prosperous and safe internationally, and all of that led to a very optimistic projections about the future. Must have been nice. This sense of optimism is a very important fact to us, so put a pin on it for a moment. Now, having said all of that, add to the mix another very important bit that heavily influenced the positive change in said economy, which is a great leap in technological advancement. It was the first time when the internet went truly mainstream, and a great number of companies took their first leap into the world of online commerce, causing the stock market to skyrocket in value and leading to a booming, albeit short-lived, prosperity and the craze of easy money making, known as a dot-com bubble. Now, for those unfamiliar with the dot-com, I don't want to bore you with too many details about this. If you want to find out more about dot-com bubble, there's a great quick video by The Plain Bagel, which I'm gonna drop the link to in the description. But yeah, this in part has fueled the economic boom as well as rising interest in the internet on a commercial level. And this is why, for example, we have Amazon today. Haha, hi Jeff. Jeffrey Bezos.
lives.
So yeah, tech. The world was transformed in 1990s with the advent of new technologies, especially home technologies. The crucial new tech being 1. Personal computers, PCs. 1995, Windows 95 streamlines operations, making it way more accessible for everyday folk. PC also meant the access to internet, of course. 1981, first website. 1986, creation of Hotmail, first popular independent email provider. 2. Mobile phones. 1982, invention of texting. Also 1992, Nokia launches its 1011, first phone which allows texting to consumers. 1999, introduction of the cross-network texting. So imagine, before 1999, you couldn't text someone who wasn't of the same mobile network as you. If you were in 3 and somebody was in T-Mobile, you couldn't text one another. How does that make sense? But yeah, that alone created a big leap in communication between people, right? And 3, compact disc technology. CDs, CDRs, CDRWs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and all that jazz. They have a peak presence in late 90s, early 2000s, with the peak sales being in 2002 for music CDs and 2004 for movie DVDs. Okay, but why are those important? Mostly because its adoption spread like wildfire. As for one, PCs, taking the US market as an example, 50% of total US households had home computers by mid of year 2000 and subsequently access to internet by mid 2001. As for number 2, mobile phones, by 2001, 32% of population uses mobile phone. By 2002, the number had risen to 62%. As for number 3, compact disc technology, CDs, although launched in 1982, in sales, 1993, CDs surpassed cassettes. By 1994, Sony released in North America its PlayStation system, the first 32-bit console that played games on CDs rather than cartridges. By 2003, DVDs surpassed VHS. So we see a pattern here. By the early 2000s, this tech had been adopted by the majority of the population by pushing out of the window any other media carriers. Home tech gets normalized, socially integrated, and wholly mainstream. This affected culture in 2 ways. Bear with me. I know it's getting complex, but we will circle back and it will all make sense, I promise. It affected culture in 2 ways. A, sociological aspect of a new looking pop culture, and what did this all mean to that society? And B, the visual stimuli aspect provided by the freshness of new mediums and the new medium carriers on the collective imagination of consumer sensibilities. Okay, we are getting into the culture now. We're getting there, friends, trust me. So as for my point A, we need some more juice. Don't judge me. I am here working my ass off. I deserve a drink. Cheers. Right, what was I saying? Yeah, right. As for my point A, it's hard for us to imagine the world prior to the constant buzz and hum of our phones and laptops, endless pings of notifications ever present dwelling in our screens, large and small. We feel so integrated with the digital ecosystem of our current day that this idea seems so inseparable from our reality. So it is hard for us to envision life much more analog. Those things that we take for granted today were once new, very new, groundbreaking, game-changing novelties that, if anything, felt unique, almost performative. A time where sending text or surfing the web was still very much a special event. It really is difficult, but we will have to take an educated leap and try to envision it here. So, before, nothing but cable phones and postcards. Then, the worldwide spread of home computers and especially the internet suddenly, for the first time, created a sense of global interconnectivity and a feeling of immediacy about the exchange of information. Suddenly, you didn't have to rely on going to some dusty libraries and dealing with a moody librarian to help you out, or asking your, I don't know, uncle about something that, as you found out years later, was nothing more but a folk tale rather than a fact. The lies that lived with. This has restructured the way we thought about information and how we all rely on one another globally. Just look at this footage of people talking about it when things were still very fresh and very new.
The worldwide computer network called the Internet has inspired more movies than any big deal technological fad since, the CB radio boom of the 1970s.
It hit, and within like 2 years, it's become so powerful.
We all have this sort of like basic deep need to communicate with other people. So I think that sort of explains the popularity of something like this.
You know, it's gratifying as hell. It's a little weird.
And I was talking to some guy, and the next day, a guy came by with a printout and read back what I had talked to some guy to show. It's kind of scary.
The sense of digital immediacy blew people's minds. The information suddenly got remote, centralized, instant, and interactive. That's why, believe it or not, at first, in the 90s, the internet was nicknamed, and I'm sorry for saying this out loud, the information superhighway.
Tonight, the information superhighway and one of its main thoroughfares, an online network called Internet.
If you ain't on the information superhighway, baby, then where is it?
At first, people at the times struggled to conceptualize this whole concept and describe it in normal words. And I mean, can you blame them?
World Wide Web, with its proliferation of special interest truck stops called websites, and the arrival of network browser programs to make the whole thing, if not idiot-proof, at least user-friendly. Most cyber voyagers log on to it.
Information superhighway, baby.
It's easier for us now, and unlike cable phones and work computers, owning one's personal device generated a worldwide fascination with this idea of belonging to an interlinked global community on your own terms. The very notion of the ability for remote communication and instant interactiveness with others was immensely celebrated. And unlike the way we see it today, this sense of immediacy was heralded as a promise of personal independency. We see this on and on again in advertising over time. People on the move, being able to do their thing while being accessible and having access in return, not chained to the permanence of location. This idea of being apart together, connected. This can feel so almost exotic to us now, because this idea as something exciting is in direct opposition to how we feel today, constantly having our smartphones in our pockets. That was the cultural landscape of year 2000s, and this was one of the philosophical driving factors behind the Y2K aesthetic. Now, as my point B, the effect of visual stimuli, remember, we can thank the design world for things. That's a long ass video. Number 1. Macintosh's introduction of
iMac G3 in 1998
was a sweepingly total game changer that defined the upcoming look of tech. It marked a clear breaking point from the previously established beigeness and boxy look of computers. It was even conspicuously advertised as such. The tanned casing suddenly felt so prehistoric, the angularity so 80s. The new G3 introduced a heightened ergonomics and transparency as design features, also bringing about the trend for a variety of transparent and colored plastics in tech. Mac's upcoming models only furthered the superiority of aesthetics over basic practicalities, suddenly making computers simultaneously look both so otherworldly and so civilized. This created a ripple effect in the tech and industrial design at large, creating a lot of items inspired by the look and feel of the Macintosh's products. And I mean a lot of products inspired by them. A lot. Aesthetic-wise, Mac products of the time were like an asteroid hitting the earth and shaking the ground to the very core. It affected completely the look of the design period. Number 2. Same kind of aesthetic superiority had been generated by the total domination of CDs on the market and its absolute monopoly as a medium carrier. The annihilation of previous ones from the market, the tape cassette, the VHS, the floppy disk, the video game cartridge, all now overtaken by CD, had created an unquestionable supremacy of the disc in the world of home tech. Exhibit A. This in turn affected the collective imagination of the general public. The newness and the ever-presence of this specific object with this specific look. The roundedness, its purity of form, all covered in its rich, lush silver, its holographic iridescence. Like G3, this unit seems so otherworldly and so advanced, yet so elemental, so alien-like. You must imagine this. If it had previously been used to boxy plastic of cassettes, it felt mesmerizing just to hold these. Needless to say, CD, with its strong visual, deeply affected contemporary culture and became a sort of an artifact for hypermodernity and visions of projected future. Add to this another development of the decade, the CGIs, 3D graphic design and architectural CADs. The boom in the CGI industry, which throughout the 90s felt as if it was improving by the month, was also capitalizing on development from the previous decades. One of the iconic developments that impacted the Y2K was the effect of morphing water that we clearly see in the movie Abyss from 1989. We see this effect repurposed on and on again throughout the era. Heavy development of computer graphics softwares created a boom for 3D graphics and render composites, which provided a whole new world of a new medium to explore. On the other hand, CAD softwares for architectural renderings allowed for the first time to digitally draft irregularities of Bezier curves, opening doors to incorporating digitally complex, rounded, irregular, fluid-like forms into projects of buildings. So, just to recap, as to the visual stimuli, the computer hardware, the silverness of CDs, the 3D render, the watery CGIs, drop all of that into the mix of what we previously talked about, which is prosperous economy, relative world peace, sociological celebration of interconnectivity, and ever-improving technological boom. All of this peppered with great optimism towards future, while with this in mind, standing collectively on the doorstep of once-in-a-lifetime turn of the millennium, a brand new enigmatic world of 2000's. There is no wonder that the sense of futurism exploded the way it did.
3. Visualizing change.
Okay, so here's the thing. A specifically futurist visions of projected times ahead are always fueled by the abrupt and positive cultural shifts of the particular times in which this is happening. With each discovery or swift development, people seek out to visualize and to materialize their excitement, a newfound curiosity about the novel and the unknown. And as it were with the 1920s and the industrial boom of the metropolises, or the 60s and 70s and the groundbreaking time of exploration of space, the 2000s, with its web of connections, modem as portal to the worldwide surfing, also sought after symbolic visualization of this brand new world of instant communication. Remember, futurism is always about the new spatial exploration. It's always about space in which things happen. And just like the 20s had space of ultra-modern city and 1970s has its cosmos, the 2000s stood at the threshold of the newly discovered online universe. A virtual world. A sort of reality reimagined, displaced, proxied, the conceptual brought into the physical representations of interconnectedness, mapped out in the foreign lands of digital landscape. A connection as art, a connection as a product, and as a lifestyle, all of it melted together and coined as an expression of culture, as an abstract entanglement symbolizing our complex, although yet to be defined, parasocial relationships played out entirely remotely. The SMSs and the WWWs, the virtual world building lying in pixels and vectors and connections, it was a highly imagined and highly abstract space so previously unknown to us. No wonder then that we looked for equally mysterious and uncharted places as a point of reference to conceptualize what we know to be equally unknown to us. The space and deep waters. Conceptually speaking, the similarity in curiosity towards the unknown stemming from far reaches of, say, sci-fi galaxies and dark depths of the oceans, resonated with dressing up the conceptual reality of the digital world. In Y2K, we see water, droplets, fluids, as well as penchant for space and space travel, the space symbolizing foreignness, but also limitlessness and potential. Water, on the other hand, symbolizes life and state of flux. With this in mind, we might have a deeper look into the curvilinear shapes so prevalent in the Y2K, not as just merely squiggly, arbitrary generated trend for these shapes, but a symbol of society's consciously felt state of change. And I found this amazing quote from the designer Karim Rashid that captures what I'm saying to a T. Let me just bring it up for you. The digital age, the information society, the global village, and the leisure culture are all phrases that describe a changing physical world where soft, organic mutability characterizes our landscape. It's where a plethora of shapes, materials, mechanics, electronics, digitalia, information, myths, markets, and tribes all form an ever-changing parabolic cosmos that is our built environment. It combines with the human body, softness and tactility to coalesce into an emerging languages, all these components giving form to our new formal landscape that is soft. It is an axiom of our new physical condition, a desire to conquer all mathematical probabilities with forms that could previously never be documented in any rational formulae. Such objects are in part a result of a new computer-aided tools of morphing, NURBS, splines, metaballs, and other bioshaping commands are fostering a more relaxed organic condition, softer, globular, blobular. This softening, or as I call it, casualization of shape, form, material, and behavior, is definitely a movement, a digital language of blobifying our world, physically and immaterially. The blobject movement is here thanks to a handful of designers who have taken a great interest in organic form and the technologies that are allowing us to morph, indulate, twist, torque, and blend our landscape. So we might say that the irregular roundness in shapes and forms is a wider sociological symbol of a civilization in flux. The designs follow the inspiration fueled by fluctuating biomorphic form, looking into invertebrates and amoeba-like shapes, primal and shape-shifting, just like the times, the tech, the people delving into new societal stage. All of it bathed in cool blue aqueous light, dressed in silver, in fluidity of water, translucence, transparence, all in turn informing the physical properties of design, creating these strong visuals of twisted, alien-like future, so specifically Y2K. The flux in society had affected the materiality of objects, which in turn have conspicuously tried to express this sense of societal flux. Oh, I know. Very complex, but makes sense. This is the kind of philosophy behind those shapes and behind those forms. And talking about all of this so far, the attitude, the design choices, the graphic and tech development, the philosophy, nothing encapsulate that in the grand melting pot of visuals more than
4. Music videos. Yes, we're getting into the good stuff. Alright people, here we go. Yes, music videos. We are getting there, friends. The thing that brought you here in the first place. You think I don't know that? Of course I know that. Here we go. Okay, so there's mainly two things at play here. The more obvious one, which is the surface level coolness of it all. At the very basic, the glassy blacks and silver cladding taken to another level. Chrome, mirror, luster, matte finish. The cold, metal, sleek coolness. Spaceships, airlocks, playrooms, sitting rooms, bathrooms, sleeping chambers, driveway tunnels, all at its designer best. And of course there's tech. Tech. Real tech, fantasy tech, CGI extravaganza as imagined celebration of technological progress of the future. Tech in gadgets, tech in interior, tech in clothing. Those flashy, I don't know what they are, brooches? Watching this as a kid, I always thought those were just really dope security tags. You know, that ones? Yeah, I don't know. So there is a coolness in some of the elements, and there is a whole subgenre taken out of contemporary cool. Marcy Gray took futurist/designer/organic lab biomorphism to such a next level. This video is pure Y2K at its white, blobby, inflatable best. My girl J-Lo gave living and partying all dressed up in computer interface environment a shot to stratosphere of cool. Old Town Liquid Dreams is a love letter to CGI water morphing effect from Abyss, solidifying this tendency of graphic liquidity as expression of new age. And while talking about liquidity, Busta Rhymes and Janet Jackson also given the CGI of the time the biggest flex. Actually, a lot of Y2K coolness stemmed from black artists. Their impeccable eye, combined with the era's call for designer edge, gave way to such incredible visuals that are legendary within this period. Look at works of Missy Elliott, look at Aaliyah. The makeup, the look, the colors are walking and talking banner of Y2K fashion. This is also mostly thanks to Hype Williams and his work, the black director visionaire that you will recognize mostly from sleek cinematography and stunning set design. So, there's the undeniable coolness of it, also indicative of the turn of the millennium times. But there is also another, less obvious aspect, and that's an undertone of depicting sociological shifts, a deeper level of addressing digital reality and virtual connections and dressing them up in the language of visual metaphor. Sure, Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson's Scream depicts a cool space travel, but look at it deeper. With them browsing the multitude of art, playing video games and recording music, enjoying the vastness of culture, all of it instantly accessible to them, enclosed in sleek, visually elemental capsule cruising throughout the unknown potentiality of space. Look at it and tell me, this is not a visual metaphor, a premonition of a smartphone. No one can tell me otherwise, I'm sorry, and this is the hill I choose to die on. And this is what I mean, this is a sort of visual abstraction of technology, a physical manifestations of interconnectivity, an existence in cyberspace, and a sense of displacement, all along their potential. Visually amped up metaphor of the pragmatics of what we know all too well and use on daily basis 20 years later. For example, J-Lo and the reality of livestream. This video is a cover art for the internet parasocial relationship phenomenon. Pre-YouTube, pre-social media, pre-everything. Updating the format of personal ads for the digital age. Here in TLC, Left Eye segment is a visual embodiment of making of dating app profile. And while we're on dating/hookup apps, tell me that the George Michael's Fast Love isn't Tinder. Or Black's Bring It All To Me. The immediacy of interchangeability of love partners is so fitting for the era of upcoming phones. Caramel and the digital avatar of man's sense of desire. The examples of this go on and on. In many senses, these things use all tricks in the book when it comes to language of design, computer graphics, sense of excitement due to self-updating technology, and channel social attitudes of the time into it. They are the best embodiment of all the bits coming together in a short form of a video.
So, it's nowhere as greatly expressed as in the world of pop music and music videos. And we have to remember that a lot of pop icons started within the time frame of the Y2K millennium, sporting a signature Y2K look and signature Y2K setting. And even though we don't associate them that much with these times today, they were all pivotal in popularizing the fashion of the futurist utopia. But how exactly that fashion came to be? That brings us to
5. Fashion.
freestyler. We could freestyler. Minimal, sporty, utilitarian on one hand, and shiny, futurist, total, and otherworldly on the other. One thing that you can definitely say about Y2K fashion is that it's very distinct and very recognizable. I mean, am I wrong? Look at me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. This is mainly due to its styling, use of specific fabrics, and heavy integration of sportswear into everyday fashion. The origins of the look stemmed from 90s clubwear and rave fashion, chiefly from UK and from Japan. The brands such as Cyberdog and Fotus were staples when it comes to this look. Also, there was an influence and fusion of 90s hip-hop style to it. And as such, it had subsequently been absorbed into the mainstream by the high street brands, and chiefly promoted as a teenage/young Gen X fashion. The style, all along the way from its origins to fleshing out as Y2K, have had its silhouettes updated with the use of specific fabrics. We see a lot of PVC, we see a lot of pleather, nylon, mesh, polyester, synthetic material, giving the clothes futurist, otherworldly, artificial look. Sportswear also played a big role. As I said, sporty silhouettes increasingly treated as a casual everyday wear. We see a lot of tank tops for women's wear and oversized cargo pants for men's wear, with a lot of zippers and pockets and elastic drawstrings and toggle cords. Trainers were having its moment, inspired by science fiction and exaggerated silhouettes and metallized details which seem to have been taken out straight from a spaceship. The high fashion, on the other hand, was sporting a more toned-down look, with much more clean lines and minimal-looking silhouette, mostly focusing on elevating the fabric as a main visual component. The inspiration stemmed more from the 1970s sci-fi and contemporary minimalism, rather than the rave culture that inspired the high street fashions. The treatment in editorial was also very minimal, very cold-looking, with white as its dominant neutral color. Sunglasses had its big moment in the era, the designers imbuing eyewear with rimless, minimal ergonomic design, especially the designer sunglasses. We can definitely thank Matrix for that. You will recognize this everywhere as an absolute staple of Y2K. Their distinct look will always be an iconic emblem of the Millennium era. Styling was a crucial component of the overall look, with spiky or multi-layered, multi-section hair for a more edgy look, or a tight, wet, slick-back hair for a more high-fashion look. Metallic makeup was mandatory. Think silver, think blue, think lavender hues for the eyeshadow, which very much helped to elevate the cosmic futurist look. Ladies in the audience, how many of you wore a silver or blue eyeshadow during the early noughties or late 90s?
I'm gonna create a naked Zen millennium kind of a look. Genius.
Do drop me a comment below, I need to know that.
Thank you.
But all of those styles wouldn't have worked if it wasn't for a specific environment in which it was so adamantly presented.
6. Architecture and interior.
The architecture and interior design of the era have equally received a very idiosyncratic, very futurist treatment inspired by the times. As mentioned before, the development of CAD technology allowed for more advanced curvature in the designs. And not that it wasn't present before, but the fluidity of the curves and rounded corners became a staple in the Y2K specifically. We see a lot of projects presented as these fantastical utopian renders designed totally and monolithically. You can see that this is pure conceptual thinking, not informed in any way by user experience or viability of realistic feedback of how those spaces would work in practice and whether they would have been an efficient solution to design problems. This is just a pure, unadulterated vision of design. Buildings quite often were very bold looking and very elemental in their alien-like forms. They sought to define and dominate the landscape with their uniqueness, imitating visions of extraterrestrial colonies and its imagined technology. Vast panes of glass and metal and chrome and silver were two go-to finishes of the era. As for the interior design, especially the retail sector, was heavily influenced by early experimentations with futurism from 1970s. These shop fronts that you are seeing here are actually from 1970s, and we can see that this roundness with their forms, their metal finishes and imposing individualistic facades had affected the inspiration behind Y2K. The commercial interior design was yet again more or less an attempt at the concept of materializing the digital. If you look deeper into designs of stores and bars and expo pavilions, it is this manifestation of trials of imagining and fleshing out the idea of how virtual reality can be translated into physicality of space. There were two substyles of this spatial design. One was very funky, loud and colorful take stemming from 1970s, and the other was more contemporary, laboratory-like, clean, sterile, cold look, and a very narrow, very washed out, greyish, silverish, bluish color palette. Nightclubs, especially, were informed by the 1970s design language and the works of the designers such as Werner Panton, for example. Another facet of Y2K stemmed from experimentation with atypical or man-made materials. For example, the use of techno-gel invented in the 90s. We see a lot of plastics. We see quick resurgence of inflatable furniture, again reviving designs from 1960s and 70s. I know that you consider this chair to be an icon of Y2K, but actually it's a design from 60s. Exactly from 1967. Inflatable furniture and objects took on as a trend and kind of became a staple niche of the Y2K, experimenting with the feel of spatial design and giving this aesthetic a more playful and kind of quirky twist to it. As for the residential interior design, things were much more informed by home technologies. Home tech played a main role in the interior and served as a point of reference for furnishings and styling, especially the high-end interior design, the fashionable design that was defined by the cold silverness of metals and irregular transparency of water-like liquidity of, for example, glassware. This design is sometimes manifested, again, in music videos. This is what was considered the upper end of Y2K, slick, cold, ultra-modern, very boxy forms with very fluid forms, pale shades of white, blue, silver, lavender, and very grey ends of teal. Also, the thing that, well, in my opinion at least, is often overlooked, but that is so iconic and such a definition of the era, is the specific look of the lamp designs. The cable system lamps in particular and the table lamps presented in the design review books of the early 2000s are so amazing in achieving this ultra alien-like, this very designer, very kind of Men in Black feel. They really were a true product of their times, literally and figuratively. For the Y2K styling of the home or any general space, these really are pure gems that define the look.
7. Art and design.
I wish I still had my Buster Groove game. I really loved that game on PS1. It was amazing. As we know, Y2K bled into almost every facet of design. The development of 3D graphics and subsequently the specific look of the video game design was influencing the field of popular art. We see a lot of 3D works in art. There was also a boom for the digital avatars in the form of TV presenters and these so-called cyber babes. Because of course, the moment the guys invented a new way how to model human-like form, they had to go for generating a whole subgenre of scantily dressed women with as spherical boobs as the tech could only allow. However, objectification aside, that idea of humanoid-shaped renders also bled into pop culture and multidisciplinary art. Another very Y2K thing that was stemming from video game design was actually this tendency of treating HUDs, which stand for heads-up display, that thing, as an element of art. Kind of elevated beyond its practical use, we see a lot of HUDs used in a purely abstract, arbitrary way, not really doing anything other than symbolizing some imaginary sense of navigation. Again, a metaphorical reference to navigating imaginary connections within digital spaces. It's the kind of reoccurring trope and the fundamental of that aesthetic. It's being reincorporated on and on again with the use of different mediums. We can see the same things with websites, for example, stripping the general practicality of websites and emails and treating them as a tool of art, manifesting abstractions into the pop culture of the time, using it as a band names, album titles, photoshoot layouts, even interior design. It was strictly treated as art rather than something that was purposeful, practical, and in of itself, the way we treat it today. As for the important artists and designers of the time, works of Misha Klein. Its composite positioning and mixed 2D and 3D work was highly influential in transcending the boundaries of photography, fashion editorial, game design, capturing the cultural ambience of the era informed by the sense of displacement and virtuality of environment. Another big name was Mariko Mori. Her mesmerizingly translucent, metallic abstractions. Within her broad portfolio, she has this very clean, alien look to her body of work that we kind of intrinsically identify with the era. And Bros Lovegrove, he's a veteran of the Y2K zeitgeist, exploring the sleek futurist curvilinearity through a myriad of design disciplines, from interior design to product design. Just look at his office, for example, whirled straight from a Y2K video. On a more colorful, funky side of things was Karim Rashid, combining strong colors, vector graphics, and the morph-like shapes. Karim was responsible for the more, for the lack of better word, groovy and neo-psychedelic, if you will, look of the era. He is the godfather of the so-called blobjects. He is the one that coined the term. Where's the wine? Why the wine always finishes when you need it? When we talk about Y2K, we really have to emphasize that the blobject philosophy really cannot be underestimated in terms of how it affected the look of items designed at the time. It really was a dominant design thought, and blob encompassed all areas of design, from cars and architectural builds all the way to design of flip-flops. We see this bleeding into the world of graphic design. For example, the famous visual identity project of a Walkman. Look, as we can see here. With its isometric planning and blobby-like shape and this very dynamic capture of the morphing-like effect of two dots, is just, you know, pure symbolic essence of the zeitgeist. If you see this pattern, you know that you're in Y2K visual era. I know it's just a logo, but I mean, it's so specific and so pivotal to the times where it happened that we cannot actually leave it out. And I'm sorry, I'm geeking out here, but you need to know this. If you want to know about Y2K, you need to know that bit as well. I think that one of the most interesting parts of the blobject philosophy affecting the world of design is in the domains of home tech and interface design. The boom of the new consumer-friendly devices were all dressed in rounded, intermingled forms, creating complex compositions on the surface. We see an absolute predominance of this visual. Also, due to the prosperous nature of the times and its promise of a new economy bolstered by the dot-com bubble, many startups were promising a lot of new exciting technological novelties to soon enter the market. There was this whole thing going on with a lot of prototypes that were supposed to be presented with the adequate amount of funding, and we see a lot of examples of this during the era. And I have to say that these gadgets were a perfect emblem of the times for multiple reasons. Visually, they display that design and look so in tune with trends. Fiscally, they are a symbol of a dot-com times and its subsequent fall. And conceptually, they represent the belief of investors in the technologically futurist utopian craze that was financially unviable and that never really materialized. Sadly, most of the startups failed miserably, which actually brings us perfectly to another point, which is
8. The demise.
As we all know, nothing good lasts long. I need to stretch a little bit. So why did Y2K end? Couple of things affected this. On one level, well, just like any other trend, it's simply because of becoming outdated. Some of the fault lies in how total and how visually demanding the aesthetic was in order to be correctly realized. And let me tell you what I mean by that. 1. The forms present within the Y2K were geared by its very design to cultivate the visions of faraway future. By its very definition, they weren't timeless. And as it usually is with contemporary design, the more crazy, the more risk-taking, out there schemes of visual language, the quicker it ages. The bolder the design, the shorter the lifespan. 2. The overall form relied on absolutism of its presence, meaning Y2K look relied on total minimalism and specific form of light exclusively. I often say that the quickest way to define aesthetic is to see what is not there. The things that will mess it up is what the style safeguards itself from. With this style, it only works if everything else is equally either minimal or futuristic. You never see anything displayed that doesn't belong to the style, nothing that reminds you of the naturalness or organic randomness of form that happens in life. It is an all-enclosed composition. The lesser lived in, the better looking. That's why it works so well in movies and music videos, but not so much in, say, home or hotel settings. This hotel room, for example, looks great strictly because it is empty. Imagine a typical guest coming here and doing typical guest stuff, unpacking bags, leaving crap on the counter, or anything of the sort. Immediate damage to the look. That's why this style is so difficult to maintain and so prone to be obsolete very quickly. Even on the architectural scale, when we look at CADs from the era, all the visuals, as I said before, weren't designed with any user experience in mind. No real-life human feedback and no taking into account how people operate in these spaces, which in turn alters the design via people's needs. These are more artistic monuments than functional architecture. Purely impractical architecture ages like milk. That's just how it is. And I'm not saying the Y2K architecture was impractical in general, but a big part of the project certainly was. Same thing with the reliance on the lighting. What is interesting is how the use of lighting hue is so crucial in Y2K. Have you noticed this? That literally everything, and I mean absolutely everything, is always presented in those white and blue tints of light. Even the lived-in spaces. This is one of the things about it. The cold light is absolutely a must for Y2K. To the point where the light is constantly artificially tampered in post-production to achieve this look. I can guarantee you that this living room cannot achieve this light on a daily basis. Unless you live in a place like, I don't know, Iceland, where there is cloudy weather 90% of the time, this style is visually unachievable because of its daylight. Give it a heavy yellow glow of sunlight of some southern country, and the ambience of futurist utility is completely erased. In the end, Y2K devolved in mainstream design. The more funky, colorful Karim Rashid-esque style trickled down into kids' market area, and high design moved to more of a McBlink and pop cosmopolitanism of mid-2000s. On another level, the impact on the demise of Y2K stemmed from more serious reasons. 1. 2001 recession. When the streams of easy money endlessly pumped in unsustainable online businesses had finally dried out, the industry imploded and the dot-com bubble crashed in late 2000, leading to the downward slope in the economy. Many businesses closed and unemployment was on the rise again. The prosperity of late 90s ceased to exist. Number 2. 9/11 happened. Needless to say, this tragedy had sent shockwaves throughout the world and led to the declaration of war on terror, which brought an end to an era of utopian approach to people's sense of international security. And 3. Sustainability. Although often using the word organic to describe the biomorphic designs of the era, the term chiefly hinted at shapes only. There was nothing organic in these designs in a way we understand organic today. Actually, it was the very opposite of organic. Favored materials being almost exclusively plastics, PVCs, fiberglass, polypropylenes, polyesters, etc. All of them highly unsustainable and most of them not recyclable. Back in the day, the case of environmental problems wasn't so widespread as it is now, but the increasing awareness in the times aged this style pretty quickly. By 2004, calling aesthetic organic felt insincere. So, seeing the economical, political, environmental aspects changing drastically during the turn of the millennium, things turned pretty gloomy. Our idea of chrome-clad techno-utopia quickly got humbled by the cold harsh reality, and the whole concept quickly fell out of favor. To quote Mark Derry from 2002 ID magazine article, "The blob is so gay 90s, so pumpanddumb.com exuberance, so Apple iMac, so New Beetle, so Guggenheim Bilbo, so chair, so over." Already the decade that begat the blob with its IPOs and its concept stocks, its errand chairs and brand cold you seems worlds away from our moment. The anxious thoughts. These are days of anthrax scares and bomb-sniffing dogs, military tribunals and McCarthyite blacklists. The blob, that candy-colored polypropylene fetish object of the giddy, suddenly innocent time before 9/11, seems so jarringly out of tune with the new age of anxiety. So, my friends, this is how the Y2K, all along with its blobby happiness, was once and for all put to rest.
9. Conclusion.
Alright, nostalgia aside, which, I'm not gonna lie, plays a huge part for me when it comes to this aesthetic, Y2K really was an interesting chapter in design history. When you really think about it, it was a last total aesthetic that ruled the world. So immersive with its narrative and with its absolutist grip on trends of the time. And I really liked it. I liked how total it was, you know? There was a brief moment where everything designer was in Y2K fashion. Buildings, interiors, clothes, media, cars, accessories, tech, and all the way to trinkets of everyday use. That's what I mean by saying total. Well, looking back at it, when you lived through it, it felt like you lived through an art movement. I mean, in hindsight, it's so cool to be able to say that. Last total aesthetic of this magnitude that defined every element of cultural outcome with such consistency was maybe, I don't know, Art Deco or Memphis? No, but not really though. Art Deco. Also, I don't think we will ever get to have such total global self-aware aesthetic anymore. We will only get deeper with the micro trends. There's just too many diverse things happening at once. We are simply not that centralized anymore. But, you know, I might be wrong here. I hope I am. I would love to see another global mania for a style in the way that Y2K took over. Would have been nice, from a design history perspective at least. Sorry, I'm being such a nerd now. I also liked it simply for how it cultivated the optimism and the utopia of the digital world, before things went to, you know, shit. The key elements that will always instantly scream Y2K, for me at least, is the silvery tech, and pretty much everything in chrome finish, obviously, the sunglasses of the era, and the lamp design. These will forever define the coolness of the period for me whenever I look back at the history of aesthetics and history of design. Movies to watch, Men in Black, pure Y2K lifted straight from the best of the design of 1970s. Spy Kids for a more groovy, funky, kid-centered Y2K. The movie Simone, if you were interested more in this cyberbabe and digital avatar kind of thing going in Y2K. The Minority Report for the typical kind of sci-fi thriller of the times. And if you want something more neo-Y2K vibe, try Passengers. The art direction is surprisingly good in a sense of that it revisits and updates the Y2K look and feel. Matrix, obviously. Now I know I haven't mentioned anything about Matrix specifically, and I suppose to because it's a video about Y2K, but this really is a material for another video in of itself. You know me, movie analysis on the agenda. Also, I would like to take a moment to thank Evan Collins and Froyo Tam, who are behind the famous and amazing Y2K Aesthetic Institute Tumblr. They are a pair of absolutely mind-blowing curators of the archives from the era. Thank you so much for making me rediscover my childhood obsessions and sending me down the rabbit hole of sweet nostalgia. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was long and it was full of many details that you may not otherwise have been interested in knowing, but they are, you know, nevertheless important to understand the bigger picture of the Y2K. It's not just, you know, silver cargo pants and TLC music videos. There was so much to it while I was researching it, and I thought, you know, I just wanted to do something more comprehensive. So tell me, what are your favorites about Y2K? Do you have anything favorite from the era, and what are those things? Please do drop me a comment below. I really want to know that. I love the era and I love knowing these things, what people liked, what they disliked about certain design periods. So let's talk about this. Also, I started up Twitter against my better judgment, so please follow me there. And yeah, let's see if the Twitter crowd will not eat me alive with the time to come. It's gonna be a great test of my character, I suppose. Thank you so much again, and have you liked my video? Yeah? Have you subscribed? Have you shared? Alright. Good. It was a pleasure. Bye.